More aftershocks in Italy, and now a state of emergency is declared. Rescue teams are still searching in the rubble, but hope of finding more survivors is fading. Today, the Foreign Office confirmed 14-year-old Marcus Burnett was one of 3 Britons killed. Also this lunchtime, dodging a financial crisis in the NHS, leaked plans suggest shutting hospital units. Hundreds of arrests over legal highs, but is it making any difference? Plus, a mum's heartfelt plea for her autistic son and the 8,000 strangers who responded.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Charlene White.
Good afternoon. Rescuers are still searching the demolished mountain towns of central Italy, which were so badly hit by Wednesday's earthquake. But it's now a search for bodies, with hopes of finding survivors rapidly diminishing. The number of confirmed dead rose to 267 today, 3 of them British. Another 400 people are in hospital. Italy's Prime Minister has declared a state of emergency in the worst hit areas, with rescue efforts still being disrupted by regular aftershocks. Sharon Thomas now on the latest on the search efforts.
They're digging in the searing heat of an Italian summer, but knowing the chances of finding any survivors now are remote. Hundreds of aftershocks are hampering the efforts of rescue teams, 5,000 of them from all over Italy. This mountain rescuer says there is still hope of finding survivors even in these hours, although we know it's very unlikely. At least 200 of the victims lost their lives here in the ancient town of Amatrice. The quake has devastated a once beautiful place, possessions destroyed, thousands left homeless and sleeping in these tents, facing an uncertain future. Umberto Palaferi lost some family members and his home to the quake. I have no idea what I'm going to do now, he says. I'm 76 and don't know if I can rebuild my house. The 6.2 magnitude quake hit early on Wednesday in a mountainous area popular with tourists. 3 British people, including a 14-year-old boy, were among the dead. Another quake measuring 4.7 struck earlier today. Italy has now declared a state of emergency in the hardest hit areas. The Prime Minister has promised £40 million for reconstruction. But from the air, you may be forgiven for wondering whether this historic mountain hideaway, which has stood for centuries, can ever be rebuilt. Sharon Thomas, ITV News.
Well, our correspondent Emma Murphy is in Amatrice and sent this to us as an update a short time ago.
In the last few minutes, we've had confirmation from the Foreign Office of the names of the 3 British victims of the earthquake here in Italy. The youngest was a 14-year-old boy, Marcus Burnett, who is from the London area. We believe that he was holidaying over here with his family. His parents were both injured. His mother suffered facial injuries and a broken nose, and his father a broken leg. We understand his sister was able to be taken from the area unharmed. Also, we have had confirmation of the names of the other 2 victims. Their names are Will and Maria Henniker Gottlieb, and they are aged 51, and Mr. Henniker Gottlieb is 55. They were also thought to be holidaying in the area. It's taken a number of days for the information to be made public, in part because of the difficulties in identifying the names of those who were brought into the hospitals, and also because of the need to tell the families and get those informed before the names were made public. As you can see from behind me, it is taking quite an amount of time to start making real progress here. They do feel that they have now managed to establish that there are no more people alive within the rubble, and they're bringing in the more heavy lifting equipment to try and get that rubble away. Of course, that is when it is likely that the death toll will rise yet further. There have been a number of aftershocks here today, and that isn't making the situation any easier.
Emma Murphy reporting there. Wide-ranging cuts to NHS services are being planned to help tackle a looming financial crisis in the service. Leaked documents revealed cuts are being considered to services right across England. The draft plans would mean some A&E departments and district hospitals would close, while other areas would see a reduction in the number of hospital beds. Angus Walker has the details.
About 9 months ago, NHS managers were ordered to come up with plans to improve health services in 44 areas of England. The forecasts were to be based on the amount of money not changing. The draft proposals have been leaked, and on the face of it, they make alarming reading.
We found evidence across England of plans to cut, change and in some cases close frontline services, so things like GP surgeries, like A&Es and like hospital beds.
But is it fair to say that a lot of these plans are hypothetical to a certain extent? Therefore, they're doomsday scenarios, aren't they?
This is not a piece of ideological research. This is a really comprehensive audit done by health experts.
The leaked documents suggest that in Greater Manchester by 2021 there would be a £2 billion shortfall and significant savings as a result. North West London would see a £1 billion shortfall, meaning cutting around 500 hospital beds. And the Black Country will have an almost £500 million shortfall, and that would mean closing an entire district hospital. The Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, declined to be interviewed today. But the Department of Health released a statement saying the plans are far from being finalised. These are still being developed and all will be subject to rigorous consultation and scrutiny. Changes to local services will only go forward where they are designed by doctors and in the clear interests of local patients. One aspect of these plans, which campaigners and the government appear to be agreed on, is that they are at a very early stage. But if the size of the deficits and the proposed closures go anywhere near the eventual reality, then it is another glimpse into the financial crisis facing the NHS. Earlier this week, ITV News revealed that 16 trusts in England had been forced to close or suspend essential services because of staffing problems during the last year.
I think there's no doubt that the NHS is facing a really deep problem. It's running out of money and it's running out of staff. It was hoped that these plans might be able to find a way through that in the years to come.
Labour and other opponents of the government's NHS policies argue that any funding crisis is caused by political choice. Angus Walker, ITV News, Westminster.
Lifeguards will be deployed on Camber Sands Beach this weekend after 5 young men drowned in the sea. The RNLI are providing a temporary team of 6 lifeguards who will be giving safety information to visitors. There were none on duty when the 5 died on Wednesday. And the Olympic swimmer Ryan Lochte has been charged with making a false statement to police after his claim that he was robbed at gunpoint in Rio. Police in Brazil say no such crime took place. The American was forced to issue an apology, saying he had exaggerated the story. Nearly 200 people have been arrested in the first 3 months of a blanket ban on the drugs formerly known as legal highs. They're substances that mimic the effects of drugs like cannabis and cocaine. Before the ban, some brands could be bought for as little as £10 for a small packet. But in May, new laws were introduced to prevent people making and selling them. Well, since then, police have arrested 186 people. More than 300 retailers have been stopped from selling the drugs, and 24 shops have been closed down altogether. Well, the police and the Home Office say it shows the new approach is to reduce the damage from misusing the substances. Well, joining me now is Neve Eastwood from the charity Release. She has also helped shape drug policy in the UK. Thank you so much for coming in. So,
thank you.
With the numbers that have been arrested, is this good news? Does this mean the problem is solved now?
I think this is really a superficial success for the Home Office and for the new legislation. The reality is, when we look at other countries that have adopted a blanket ban approach to these substances, what we've seen is the substances actually shift towards the illicit market. So those that were popular, and we have to remember not all of these drugs were popular, but those that were popular beforehand shift to the illicit market and to online sales. So in fact, in Ireland, which adopted this approach in 2010, the rates of use increased from 16% to 22% in the most recent figures. So it doesn't impact on use.
However, the reality of it is, though, Neve, a lot of these drugs can be incredibly harmful to people. I've seen some of the effects when I've been talking to young people on the streets before. Something needs to be done. We can't just sort of sit there and say it's all fine and work itself out. So what should we be doing?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think we have to recognise that prohibition generally is a failed policy. What's interesting about this legislation is, in fact, it doesn't criminalise the user. And in reality, most young people are using the traditional drugs, so cocaine, MDMA, ecstasy. And what we'd like to see is an end to criminalising people unnecessarily. The Home Office recognises this in its own research, where it says tough sanctions don't impact on levels of use. So they know this, but they needlessly criminalise in the region of 60,000 people every year. We need to be focusing on public health responses, on education.
Yeah. And I guess, you know, very quickly, though, the final question is, the reality is, yes, they may not be able to get it in the shops, but they can still get it online.
Absolutely, absolutely. And actually, for an individual who's importing these drugs online through something like the dark web, they face a criminal prosecution, even though that use will be for personal consumption. And so what we would like to see is, you know, in 2013 to 2015, the government spent £180,000 on education. We really need to be investing in making sure young people know how to protect themselves and reduce the harms.
Absolutely. Well, Neve, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Surrey police are appealing for witnesses after reports a young child was abducted from the streets yesterday. Police are trying to identify the child, who was seen being put in a van in Redhill just before 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon. So far, no one has reported a child matching their description as missing. Well, Nick Wallace is in Redhill for us this lunchtime. Nick, this is quite mysterious, but what can you tell us about the investigation?
That it's still ongoing right now. Police are poring over CCTV image taken from Redhill town centre to try to identify who that boy was and the driver of the van. What we do know is that at 5:15 yesterday afternoon, on this busy road behind me, a witness saw a boy being taken into a black van. He was described as being around 6 to 7 years old, 4 foot tall, white, and wearing a red top with dark blue jeans. And it's that black van that the police are so keen to trace.
The witness who first contacted us in respect of the circumstances that were first described is adamant that the vehicle involved is a black VW transporter van on a 02 registration index plate. So we are still keen to speak to anybody who owns a vehicle matching that description or knows of someone who owns a vehicle matching that description.
Now the image of the van that you saw was identified and eliminated from police inquiries. However, it is going to look very similar. One final little detail is that a bike that was apparently abandoned by the boy in that stairwell there, which leads up to Redhill Station, is being suggested as a bike that many kids in the area use. So it could all be just a misunderstanding. It equally could be something very similar, which is why the police are devoting significant resources to it.
Nick, thank you. Still to come, I'll be chatting to two of Team GB's gold medalists. Gymnast Max Whitlock and kayaker Joe Clarke have just arrived in the building. They'll be here in the studio very shortly. And the kindness of strangers, why 8,000 of them sent this teenager a birthday card. An optometrist who was found guilty of manslaughter after the death of an 8-year-old boy from Suffolk has today been given a 2-year suspended jail sentence. Honey Rose was a locum at Boots Opticians in Ipswich when she failed to notice Vincent Barker's fatal eye condition. Sally Lockwood has been at Ipswich Crown Court this morning. Sally, what more can you tell us about this?
Well, this case is unique. It's the first time an optometrist has been found guilty of manslaughter by gross negligence. And in the last few moments, the judge sentenced Honey Rose, 35-year-old Honey Rose, to 2 years imprisonment, suspended for 2 years. Mrs. Rose saw Vincent Barker, known as Vinny, just months before he died in 2012 for a routine eye examination and failed to spot obvious abnormalities that could have saved him from dying of fluid on the brain. The judge said he was in no doubt that Mrs. Rose had not looked at the retinal images taken that day, and the trial heard evidence to suggest she'd been looking at images from the year before. The judge addressed Vinny's parents in court, Joanne and Ian Barker, and said Mrs. Rose and her husband had written 2 letters expressing their sympathy for their loss and the wish to apologise to them directly. But Mr. and Mrs. Barker shook their heads in response. But the judge did say that as a final gesture of great dignity, the Barker family communicated to him that they were mindful of the effect an immediate custodial sentence would have on Mrs. Rose's 3 young children, which of course has no bearing on the effect that losing Vinnie has had on their lives.
Sally, thanks very much. Now, the Rio Olympics will be remembered as Team GB's most successful, not least because of so many first-time wins in a number of sports, 2 of which were gymnastics and canoeing. Gymnast Max Whitlock made history after winning not 1 but 2 gold medals in one day, with routines on the floor and the pommel horse, while Joe Clarke secured gold in the canoe slalom, the first time Team GB won in the men's single kayak. Well, they both arrived at our studios a short while ago. Max seems very comfortable on his hands as he is on his feet. I'm pleased to say that both of them are here with me now in the studio. Unfortunately, Max isn't on his hands, but there you go. But welcome to you both. Thank you so much for coming in. Are you tired of partying yet, both of you?
To be honest, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. I'm still trying to take it all in. I haven't been back long. We only got back Tuesday.
Yeah.
So it's about sort of spending the time and looking forward to spending this weekend with my family.
Absolutely. But does it kind of feel like it's been like a week's hangover, perhaps, because you've had lots of celebrations with your family and friends?
It's a bit of a novelty for us, really, because obviously we don't really get to kind of indulge in all those kind of things. Normally we make so many sacrifices along the way and all that kind of thing. So really, it's quite nice to actually have a bit of a blowout now and before we get back into training. And
it's going to sound like a really silly question, but not being able to have loads of blowouts whilst you've been training, was it all worth it to have that hanging around your neck?
Yeah, for sure. I'd do it a million times over, yeah.
Now, when you decided that obviously you were going to take part in the Olympics and you qualified to be able to do it, was there any point in time where you thought, I may make history here?
You got to never think about it. I'll try and take it off my mind completely. I never go into a competition expecting results, expecting medals. I go in to do my job, and that's what I train for. I mean, you get 50 seconds to show what we've been working on for years. If it pulls off, it's amazing, really.
And is this like a huge dream come true for you, Joe? Because in London 2012, I believe that you were watching some of the competitors over at Lee Valley when they were taking part. When you were sat there, do you think, that's going to be me in 4 years' time?
I mean, well, obviously I was there and saw the guys win the gold and the silver on the same day, which is kind of like a bit of a momentous day for canoe slalom in the games, and obviously that kind of inspired me. Yeah. Moved down to Lee Valley shortly after that and trained full-time, obviously. I was training full-time before in Nottingham, but moved down to London. The world-class facility there that kind of we put on, and with all the help from UK Sport and National Lottery for the funding to kind of like really put that venue on the map as one of the best sporting facilities in the UK.
Absolutely, I've been. It's wonderful. Lee Valley's just incredible.
So without that, I wouldn't. Yeah, for sure. Obviously, that kind of really helps with the process of getting there, and you kind of dream about getting to the top of the podium and trying to emulate people's successes. But you have obviously the legends that you think of.
But you're legends now. Both of you are legends, and that's going to be reflected in the various homecoming plans that your local towns have got. Yours is tonight, Max. What's the plan?
I'm going back to my club, so I haven't been to South Essex yet. I haven't seen all the guys yet. So there'll be about 2,000 kids waiting for me and Bryn, because me and Bryn are both from the same club and both made the team. So it's good to have 2 guys there. It's an achievement for us, and looking forward to getting
bands, there. Are you going to like be on a float or something?
To be honest, I don't know what to expect yet. They've done it previously on the other competitions like Olympics, Commonwealths, but I think this one's a bit bigger, so it's...
You're going to walk on your hands again?
I don't know,
Well, Joe, yours is going to be quite big because you're almost going down a float, and I believe they're having a big, almost festival for you in the local park.
Yeah, so that's going to be really big, actually. Probably the highlight of that's being paraded around the park in my kayak, which is kind of a bit of a novelty factor, something that I don't believe has ever been done before, and it's kind of one of those things that I'm not sure will ever be done again because it's kind of really cool.
Yeah,
the town's really proud, and they've... Yeah, they've put on a big show. They've got a stage out there. They've got a beer tent. They've got a hog roast, I think. There's going to be a lot of people, and I've got to do some announcements and stuff.
Though, Matt, sorry to interrupt you, Joe, but you're, I believe, turning off ITV tomorrow.
Yes.
For I Am Team GB. How's that going to work?
Yeah, so it's off for an hour. Basically, just trying to get people out onto the streets and people out into trying new sports. So there'll be loads of Olympians surrounding the country.
Amazing.
Doing different sports, and it's trying to get people involved. And so I'll be at the Copper Box.
Yeah.
Where are you?
I'm at the Gunpowder Park Run, which is just down the road from me.
Everywhere.
Well, I'll have to see where my local Olympian is going to be. Well,
exactly.
Max and Jay, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And the gold medal winners will be answering your questions live on Facebook in just a few minutes. The address to take part is facebook.com/ITV News. Now, when Ollie Jones's mum found him making himself a birthday card because he was worried he wouldn't get any, her heart broke. Ollie turns 15 tomorrow and has autism, which has made making friends quite hard for him. So his mum decided to share her son's story in an appeal on Facebook, and through the powers of social media, he's going to have a very happy birthday indeed. Rupert Evelyn has their story.
It's Alfie, it's Alfie's birthday.
Ordinarily, Ollie Jones can open his birthday cards in minutes. But this year is far from ordinary, and there's a fair chance it may take days, even weeks, to get through the post. Thousands of complete strangers are wishing him well after his mum Karen used social media to ask whether there was anything people could do for her autistic son on his birthday. She'd found Ollie making cards for himself, fearful that they'd be the only ones he'd receive.
It's just as emotional, and Ollie's sat there this morning before anyone was here and opened some and was going, wow, amazing, fantastic. For some autistic children, making and maintaining friendships is incredibly hard. And so, yeah, he's got a couple of people at school and he does go to a fab youth club, but out of school, there's no one.
Whether by hand or stuffed into post office boxes, the cards just keep on coming.
We saw it in the newspaper, so we thought we'd give him a little card.
Why? What touches you? What inspires you to make that?
I've worked with children all my life. I've got my own children, and I think, when they have a little problem, it's try and help them, don't you?
Well, we are a nice road, and we're very nice neighbours up the top, and we do all help each other.
And the evidence suggests that kindness stretches way beyond Ollie's street, with cards coming from all over the world. His birthday tomorrow is sure to be one to remember.
Wow.
Rupert Evelyn, ITV News, Exmouth.
Right, can you possibly...
Well, how lovely, right? That's it this lunchtime. I'll be back later with Alistair Stewart for the ITV Evening News. The news where you are follows the national weather, but from everyone here in the lunchtime team, goodbye.